to start with development of GIT. So here you can see this is the parts of a primitive gut which look in our embryo. So first, this epithelium lining of is completely of endodermal origin, because we know from endoderm which forms our GIT, and in mouth and anal canal, that is, we can say this forms a mouth and this forms an anal canal. So some epithelium is also from ectoderm, because you can see this is stomatium which is derived from ectoderm, and also this is proctadium which is derived from ectoderm. So not only endoderm, sometimes especially in this mouth and anal canal we have some ectodermal origins like stomatium and proctadium. And next, coming to head and tail folds are formed along with the enclosed yolk sac. Actually, this is yolk sac, so this is head and this is tail end. So these folds are formed even when yolk sac is still present to form a primitive gut. So primitive gut is having a free communication with the yolk sac, that is mainly midgut is having free communication. Even hindgut by this also yolk sac close, but midgut is in direct communication. So our primitive gut is divided into cranial part, mid part, middle part, and a hind part. So the cranial part is nothing but forming the foregut, which is separated from stomatium, right? You can see it is separated from stomatium mainly by a membrane called as buccopharyngeal membrane. And next, the caudal part is forming our hindgut, and this hindgut is separated from proctadium. You can see this is a proctadium mainly by a cloacal membrane. So here we have the buccopharyngeal membrane, and here we have the cloacal membrane. So later what happens is this both gets open to the exterior and disappear. We know now our mouth is open to the exterior, and even we know that our anal canal is open to the exterior. So later they get open to the exterior, and finally this buccopharyngeal membrane and also this cloacal membrane get disappeared. So next we have our dorsal aorta coming into the picture. So the dorsal aorta actually develops dorsal to the gut. So yeah, this is the gut. So dorsal to it we have the dorsal aorta, as the name suggests, right? So this gives branches. It mainly branches to the midgut known as vitelline artery. So you can see this is a vitelline artery which is giving a main branch to the midgut, that is vitelline artery. And later all the branches disappear and only 3 branches remain at last. So what are those 3 branches? Actually here they are not showing those 3 branches. That is a celiac artery which supplies the foregut. So as you can we'll check out here. So we know foregut. So foregut is mainly supplied by our celiac artery, and our midgut. Our midgut is supplied by our superior mesenteric artery, and our hindgut is supplied by inferior mesenteric artery. So celiac artery, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric. Very easy to remember. Celiac, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric. So these are supplying our primitive gut. That is our foregut, midgut, and hindgut. So later communication appears, with the yolk sac disappear, and the midgut forms like a tube. So you can see still here yolk sac is present. So now this communication is getting separated, and now our midgut is forming a tubular structure. So next it forms a loop. So you can see this is tube-like structure. Now you can see it is forming a loop-like structure over here. This is the perfect structure to show a loop-like structure of our midgut. So in this superior mesenteric artery also passes. So yeah, that we need to remember. And this loop is divided into proximal or pre-arterial segment. So here you can see this is a proximal part which is called as pre-arterial segment, and we have a distal part which is called as post-arterial segment. So this is a proximal, this is a distal one is a post-arterial segment. And from this post-arterial segment you can also see a bud is arising. This bud is mainly known as cecal bud. So this cecal bud is mainly present to the at the near apex of a loop. Yeah, it is apex of a loop. So the cecal bud is mainly present at the apex of the loop. We also have one story associated with it, that is midgut loop is actually this midgut loop lies outside the abdominal cavity, that is it is opening into the umbilical opening. So mainly it is present in our extra embryonic coelom, and it is also associated with the proximal part of our umbilical cord. But later what happens is go back to the abdominal cavity. So what I am saying, first it remains outside the abdominal cavity, and later it enters into the abdominal cavity. Especially it lies in the proximal part of our umbilical cord. So next what happens is the allantois open into the ventral aspect of hindgut. So let us check out the allantois. So here you can see this is the allantoic diverticulum which is opening into a ventral part of our hindgut, that is into the cloaca. You can see, right? So the same structure is here. This is allantois. It is opening into the cloaca. So now what happens? Let us understand this story now. So allantois open into the ventral aspect of hindgut. It is called as cloaca, and cloaca is divided into broad ventral part. This is a broad ventral part, and also it is divided into narrow distal part. So the broad ventral part mainly give rise to primitive UGS, that is urogenital system. So this you can say this is a primitive urogenital sinus. So this is a broad ventral part, this is a distal part. So ventral part give rise to primitive urogenital sinus, and the narrow distal part give rise to primitive rectum. So the rectum forms from this distal part. And also not only rectum, it also give rise to anal canal. So these both are mainly separated by a urorectal septum. So yeah, here you can see that urorectal septum. So these both are separated by a urorectal septum, and this urorectal septum is first seen in between the allantois and cloaca. So where is allantois and cloaca? So that is very important to remember. First, this urorectal septum is between our allantois and cloaca. Later, it is between a proximal part and distal part of our cloaca. So this is what we need to understand about the urorectal septum. And next what happened is this urorectal membrane or septum grow towards the cloacal membrane. So yeah, I can see this is a cloacal membrane right first. So this is growing towards the cloacal membrane, and now the cloacal membrane is further and fused with it, and now this cloacal membrane is further divided into the ventral urogenital membrane, right? Ventral urogenital membrane, which is associated with the urogenital sinus, and the dorsal anal membrane, and it is in association with the rectum. So the mesoderm around it is also heaped up, and now the anal membrane lie in the bottom of the pit, and this is also called as anal pit, and the anal pit of proctadium, which mainly forms the anal canal. So this is how our urorectal septum is dividing our cloacal membrane into urogenital membrane and also anal membrane. And remember that urorectal septum first lies between allantois and cloaca. Later it is present in between the distal and dorsal part of our cloaca. So now let us come to the theory part, like what are the derivatives of our foregut, midgut, hindgut. So the foregut derivatives are mainly it is giving rise to the floor of the mouth, tongue, pharynx, pharyngeal pouch derivatives. So you can understand like foregut means starting from mouth and up to the intestine. Midgut means about our intestine, and even in hindgut we have intestine, but we have large intestine. So let us see them. So foregut derivatives, and also we have thyroid, esophagus, stomach, duodenum. Remember your stomach is from foregut, and duodenum first part, that is up to superior part, and also upper half of our descending second part up to duodenal papilla, and also liver, extrahepatic biliary system, pancreas, respiratory system. So all these are under our foregut derivatives. Next the midgut derivatives are duodenum, that is descending second part. So the first part is from foregut derivative, and the midgut derivative is our second part of a duodenum, which is next part or distal part of our papilla. So upper part of papilla is derived from foregut, and lower part of the papilla and duodenum is derived from the midgut. And also we have the horizontal and ascending, that is 3 and 4 parts of our jejunum, ileum, cecum, appendix, ascending colon, and also right 2/3 of transverse colon, and left 1/3 of transverse colon start from the hindgut derivative. And also we have descending and pelvic colon, rectum, upper part of anal canal, and urogenital system parts, which are from the primitive UGS, that is primitive urogenital sinus. So all these are from hindgut derivatives. So we know already arteries of gut, as I said, celiac artery, superior mesenteric, inferior mesenteric. Let's check out. The celiac artery gives its supply to blood supply to foregut, and mainly to the lower part of esophagus up to the middle part of duodenum. So this is important. From lower part of esophagus to the middle of duodenum, the blood supply is by celiac artery. And the superior mesenteric artery mainly gives the blood supply to the midgut, and the inferior mesenteric artery supplies its blood to the hindgut. And one more important point is the endoderm. As we said, our GIT is developed from an endoderm, that is either foregut, midgut, or hindgut. They mainly give rise to only epithelium lining of this gut, but not GIT, but not other structures like smooth muscle, connective tissue, peritoneum. These are mainly derived, or they are derived mainly from the splanchnopeoric mesoderm. So we know splanchnopeoric mesoderm, it is in our lateral plate mesoderm. Lateral plate mesoderm, here I can understand. So we know lateral plate mesoderm is divided into our somatic layer and also splanchnic layer. So that splanchnic layer of mesoderm is giving rise to smooth muscle, connective tissue, peritoneum, which are present in our gut or GIT system. So now let us move on to esophagus. So now let us understand how each of the structure is derived from which part. So esophagus, it is a starting part. So it is from foregut. It is mainly present between the pharynx and stomach, right? Everyone knows this, because pharynx, you can understand it is continuation from the mouth, and stomach is lower. So in between this we have our esophagus. So this is the first short excuse me. So it's first short, but later it elongates with the neck by the descent of diaphragm and also increasing the pleural cavities. So because of descent of diaphragm, we know diaphragm actually in fetal life, before undergoing folding, it lies in the starting part, septum transversum, right? So septum transversum is actually first present in the place of our mouth. I can say it is just present before our mouth structure, but later because of undergoing descent and also increase in the pleural cavities and also elongation of the neck, our esophagus is also elongated and it has come to its original place. And the musculature of esophagus is mainly derived from the mesenchyme, and this is surrounding the foregut. Of course, this mesenchyme surrounding the foregut give rise to the musculature of esophagus. So this musculature is further divided into upper two-third and the lower one-third. The upper two-third is mainly forming the striated muscle, and the lower one-third is a smooth muscle which is formed as over the rest of the gut. And now let us see about stomach. So stomach, we can understand it by diagram very easily. So before that, we need to discuss this. We know a trilaminar disc ectoderm, intraembryonic coelom, endoderm, and we know here's a notochord. This is actually the lateral folding which is going on. All layers are undergoing folding. So you can understand down the intraembryonic coelom is folding like this. This is the endoderm. So this endoderm is forming a GIT inside. You can see this ring, and a dorsal mesangium, ventral mesogastrium. So the gut which is having anteriorly the ventral mesogastrium, and posteriorly it is having the dorsal mesogastrium. And we know all the layers in our histology we already did it in a detail, that is epithelial lining of endoderm. And we have the submucosa layer, and also we have the muscle wall serous layer from splanchnopleurotic mesoderm. So now let us start our stomach, how the stomach is formed. So stomach is actually first a fusiform dilation, right? Here you can see this fusiform structure. So first the stomach is like that, which is mainly from the foregut, right? If you remember, stomach is a derivative of foregut, and this is mainly present distal to the esophagus. Yeah, just now we have discussed this. Esophagus is between the pharynx and stomach. So of course distal to esophagus we have a stomach. First it is a fusiform dilation. So later what happens? The dorsal border along with the posterior abdominal wall is attached by a fold of peritoneum, that is mainly known as dorsal mesogastrium, right? So this dorsal mesogastrium, as we discussed, so what happens to the stomach is the dorsal border of the stomach is attached with the posterior abdominal wall. For example, this is stomach and its posterior wall, it is attached by this dorsal mesogastrium, and its ventral border is attached with the septum transversum. So we know this is the septum transversum which later forms our diaphragm. So this septum transversum is attached to the ventral border of the stomach, and by another fold of peritoneum, that is mainly known as ventral mesogastrium. So you can see this is the ventral mesogastrium which is helping the stomach to fix to the septum transversum in the ventral or anterior side. So the ventral mesogastrium is which pass from the stomach to the liver, to the diaphragm, and also to the anterior abdominal wall. This is very important. Ventral mesogastrium pass from the stomach first, next to the liver. Yeah, in this you can understand. So this is the stomach, it pass to the liver, and also next it pass to the diaphragm and also to the anterior abdominal wall. So like this anterior side is all structured or supported mainly by our ventral mesogastrium, and posterior side it is by our dorsal mesogastrium. And remember that septum transversum gives rise to liver, diaphragm, all the structures. And this ventral mesogastrium is mainly between the liver and stomach. So ventral mesogastrium between the liver and stomach, this is called as lesser omentum. So this is you can understand the lesser omentum is nothing but the ventral mesogastrium between the liver and stomach. So the part between the liver and diaphragm and anterior abdominal wall mainly give rise to the coronary and falciparum ligaments. So this is again one more important point. Coronary or falciparum ligaments are mainly formed between the liver, diaphragm and anterior abdominal, that is nothing but the ventral mesogastrium give rise to coronary and falciparum ligaments. And the dorsal mesogastrium is divided by spleen. So you can see here this is the spleen. So the dorsal mesogastrium is mainly divided by the spleen into the part between the stomach and the spleen, and that is nothing but the gastrosplenic ligament. And the part gastrosplenic, in the name only you can understand, that is from stomach to spleen. So you can see here the gastrosplenic ligament. And next we have the part between the spleen and the posterior abdominal wall is called lienorenal ligament. So spleen and the posterior abdominal. In the posterior abdominal we have kidney. So the name renal. Lineo means spleen. So lienorenal ligament is between the spleen and the kidney. And one more important point about stomach is the stomach is mainly having a differential growth. So it undergoes alteration in shape and also its orientation. So originally its ventral border is facing upward and towards the left. So we know stomach is placed towards left and becomes the lesser curvature. So the original ventral border which is facing upward and towards the left becomes the lesser curvature. So this is my left side. So this becomes the lesser curvature. And the dorsal border which is downward and this which is left and becoming the greater curvature. So remember that dorsal border becomes a greater curvature and the ventral border becomes a lesser curvature of our stomach. So we know that actually in our anatomy we already know what is the lesser curvature, greater curvature of our stomach, right? So and next the original left surface is forming an anterior surface and the original right surface is forming the posterior surface of the stomach. This is what we need to understand. The original left surface of the stomach, so the left surface of the stomach is forming anterior surface and the dorsal surface is forming, or the original right surface is forming our posterior surface of our stomach. So now let us move on to duodenum. So this is enough for stomach. Now let us see how duodenum is formed. So in duodenum, it is having the superior or first part and upper half of descending or second part of duodenum. This is the starting part of the duodenum which is derived from the foregut, of course we know. And the rest of the duodenum is mainly from the most proximal part of the midgut. So duodenum is in the form of a loop, right? You can see it's a form of a loop. And it is associated with the posterior abdominal wall by mainly mesoduodenum. So this is again important structure to remember. So it is attached to the posterior abdominal wall by mesoduodenum. And the mesoduodenum which also forms a mesentery, which is the next loop falls to right. So like this the next loop falls towards the right side. So this mesoduodenum is also fusing with the peritoneum of the posterior abdominal wall. So most of the duodenum becomes retroperitoneum. So as this mesoduodenum is attaching to a peritoneum, most of the duodenum is retroperitoneal. So what is retroperitoneal is, this is not fully covered by a peritoneal cavity. Only some part is covered by a peritoneum. So it is called as retroperitoneal. Yeah. So duodenum is retroperitoneum. And next, the mesoduodenum persists in relation to the smaller part of the duodenum adjacent to the pylorus. That is, in a radiograph, it is seen as duodenal cap. So you can see it is like a cap, duodenal cap. So it is mainly present adjacent to our pylorus in our stomach. And the proximal part of the duodenum is supplied by a celiac artery and the distal part is supplied by superior mesentery, because we know proximal part of duodenum by celiac because it is from foregut, and distal part is by superior mesenteric because it is from midgut. And now let us move on to jejunum and ileum. So as I said you, the retroperitoneal, so this is what called as retroperitoneal. That is only, you can say it is backside, it is not covered by peritoneum, only this part is covered by peritoneum. So it is called as retroperitoneal organ. So the jejunum and ileum are from the pre-arterial segment of midgut loop. If you remember, midgut has pre-arterial and post-arterial loop. So from the pre-arterial loop, mainly our jejunum and ileum form, and the terminal ileum is from the post-arterial segment. This is important. So only the terminal part of the ileum is from the post-arterial segment of the gut, and it is proximal to the cecal bed. So this is a cecal bed. So proximal to it, our terminal part of the ileum forms. And next, coming to the cecum and appendix. So cecum and appendix, the cecal bud is from the post-arterial segment of a midgut loop. So you can say this is a cecal bud which is mainly forming from our posterior arterial segment of midgut loop. We know this is a posterior arterial segment, so it gives rise to cecal bud. And the appendix is formed by enlargement of this bud, and the proximal of bud forms the cecum. So proximal of the bud forms a cecum. This forms a cecum, and this forms an appendix. This forms the ileum. So what they are saying, it is formed by enlargement of this bud. The proximal of the bud forms the cecum, and distal to the bud is narrow and form the appendix. So proximal part forms a segment and the distal is narrow and it is forming the appendix. So that we need to understand here in from a cecal bud. So from the cecal bud only both cecum and appendix are formed. That is what they mean to say. And the appendix is formed from the apex of ascending colon. So we know this is ascending colon, and this ascending colon is mainly derived from the post arterial segment of our midgut, which is mainly distal to our cecal bud. So you can see this is distal to our cecal bud. And next we have a transverse colon. So this is a transverse colon. So in the transverse colon, the right 2/3 part is from the post arterial segment of midgut loop, but the left 1/3 is mainly from our hindgut. That is which is supplied blood supply by inferior mesenteric artery, and we know this is supplied by superior mesenteric artery because this is from midgut and this is from hindgut. And we know descending colon is purely from hindgut. So these colors you can see here what it is differentiating. And rectum, you know, our rectum is mainly from primitive rectum, that is dorsal subdivision of cloaca. So that we can understand here. So we know the dorsal division of our cloaca is nothing but forming a primitive rectum, right? And this upper part is mainly derived from the hindgut, which is proximal to the cloaca. That is about rectum. So here you can see this is the rectum. They are saying that our rectum is derived from the primitive rectum. That is a dorsal subdivision of cloaca, and the upper part is derived from the hindgut, which is proximal to the cloaca. This is upper part. This is proximal to cloaca. And next, moving on to anal canal. So this is our anal canal. So anal canal is mainly derived from the endoderm, that is from the primitive rectum. So we can say this is from the endoderm line, that is from the primitive rectum, and partly from ectoderm. The ectoderm of anal pit is nothing but proctarium, which is having a line of junction between them. That line of junction is nothing but our anal membrane, or also having anal valves. It is nothing but called as pectinate line. So you can say the anal membrane, anal pit lined by ectoderm, and hindgut lined by endoderm. So this is the anal membrane which disappears. The anal canal is thus established. So it is lined partly by endoderm and partly by ectoderm. So these are the anal walls, anal columns between these both structures. So it's time to understand the rotation of gut. So what is this rotation? In the name you can understand that something is rotating. So the midgut loop is present outside the abdominal cavity, as we studied, in the part of the extra embryonic coelom near the umbilicals. So the loop has a pre-arterial proximal and post-arterial distal segment. So this is a pre-arterial and this is a post-arterial segment, right? So next, initially the loop lie in the sagittal plane. That is proximal segment is cranial, right? And the post-arterial segment is caudal, and also it is ventral to the distal segment. And next, rotation. So what happens when rotation takes place? So in rotation, the loop goes anti-clockwise rotation by 90 degrees. That is, they lie now in horizontal plane. So you can see here the midgut loop is rotating. That is, a pre-arterial segment comes to lies to right side, and the post-arterial segment come to left side. So before you can see they are like this is left and this is right, but after rotation this is coming to the right side and this is going to the left side. So this is how rotation is taking place, and it is now in a horizontal plane, and the pre-arterial segment is towards the right and the post-arterial segment is towards the left. So this is a post-arterial, this is a pre-arterial. As we said before, this pre-arterial, post-arterial, remember pre-arterial is yellow color and post-arterial is blue color. So now they are coming into the right and left side, and pre-arterial is increasing in length to form the coils of jejunum and ileum, and still it is outside the abdominal cavity and to the right side of the distal limb. And now you can see the coils of jejunum and ileum are formed by the extension of pre-arterial, and this is still the cecal bed, and still the left side is of post-arterial segment. So the next step is, so next the coils of jejunum and ileum return to the abdominal cavity. Till now they are outside the abdominal cavity, now they are entering into the abdominal cavity, and the midgut loop undergo further anti-clockwise rotation, and now these coils of jejunum are passed behind the superior mesenteric artery into the left half of abdominal cavity. So if you remember, before this yellow color part is towards right side, but after again undergoing the anti-clockwise rotation, now you can see this is coming to the left side and it is passing behind. So this is the superior mesenteric artery. So behind the superior mesenteric artery towards left side, now our coils of jejunum and ileum are passing. So this is what the coils of jejunum and ileum pass behind the artery to the left side, and the part of the duodenum derived from midgut, and this is as a result of the hindgut, that is descending colon, is pushed into the left side. This is important. And now let us check out the next step. So duodenum lie behind the artery and coils jejunum and ileum, which occupy the posterior and left part of the abdominal cavity. Before they are right, now they are towards the left side. And finally, the post-arterial segment of midgut return to the abdominal cavity. So the post-arterial segment, which is that one, that is our blue color one. So the blue color, the post-arterial segment is again of midgut returning into the abdominal cavity and also rotate in the anti-clockwise direction. So the transverse colon now lies anterior to the superior mesenteric artery. So this is the superior mesenteric. So the transverse colon is now above the superior mesenteric artery and the cecum lies towards the right side. Yes, where is the cecum? All rotation takes place in anti-clockwise direction. This is very important point. So whatever the rotation takes place mainly in the anti-clockwise direction, and remember now the cecum is towards the right side. This is descending colon, superior mesenteric artery, transverse colon, ascending transverse, descending colon, right? And finally the cecum lie below the liver and ascending colon. So now finally the cecum is lying below the, so this is the cecum, right? So now the cecum is below the liver. Now you can imagine in a 3D structure, for example my fingers are liver, so below liver if you open you can see here the cecal bud towards the right side, cecum, and the ascending colon can't be demarcated still, so right you can see it is not still clearly formed here. And gradually the cecum descends to iliac fossa and ascending, transverse, descending parts of colon become distinct later. So this is how the rotation takes place, just very simple process. That is all the structures first they are in right, that is our pre-arterial segment is towards the right and post-arterial is towards the left. So after rotation what happened is just they are twisting, that is the blue part, that is post-arterial segment is coming towards the right and the pre-arterial segment is going to the left, that's it. So you can see now the pre-arterial segment is towards the right and post-arterial is towards the left. That is in the first case, that is when rotation doesn't take place. After the rotation takes place, now you can see this blue one is nothing but post-arterial segment. This is towards the right and the pre-arterial segment is towards the left. This is important. So you can write it for clarity. So this is right, this is left. So before right left and after right left you can comparing the colors. So before right left you can see first yellow, next blue. So now this blue is towards this side and yellow is towards this side. So what is this blue? This blue is nothing but the post-arterial segment. So post-arterial segment is first and the pre-arterial segment has come to the left. So this is what the rotation going on in a intestine. So here you can see after rotation how it is happening. So here you can see this is a pre-arterial segment, this is a post-arterial segment. Arrow indicates the direction of rotation. So like this, as we said before. So this is what happening here like this, and the outline of umbilical opening, and finally D is what which final take place. If you remember here you can see, so blue towards right side, yellow towards left side, that is post arterial segment towards right side, pre-arterial segments towards left side. So that is how rotation is going on. Of our video. So now we are in the fixation of gut. So after rotation what happens, that the duodenum, ascending colon, descending colon, rectum become retroperitoneal by fusion of mesenteries with the posterior abdominal wall. As we discussed about duodenum, that because of fusing with the posterior abdominal only some part is covered by peritoneum, so that is called as retroperitoneum. So what are the structures becoming retroperitoneum after rotation? Those are duodenum, ascending colon, descending colon, rectum become retroperitoneum. And the original mesentery persists as a mesentery of small intestine and the transverse mesocolon and also pelvic mesocolon. So the original mesentery still persists in the form of mesentery of a small intestine, transverse mesocolon and also pelvic mesocolon. So this is what about fixation. So final part is our anomalies. So what are the possible anomalies in case of our condition? So first in anomalies, let us discuss our theory part so that we can discuss the diagrams at last. So congenital means from birth only we are having some anomalies like obstruction, because like atresia means it is continuity of the lumen is obstructed, so the food or whatever the passage of the substances cannot be done because of its obstructed, and the segment of the gut may be absent or replaced by the fibrous tissue. We know whenever the fibrous tissue it acts like an obstruction site, it will not allow the easy flow or passage of food or any other material. So the septum may be blocked, or that is it may block the lumen also. And stenosis, in the name only you can understand, stenosis means narrowing. So lumen is abnormal or becoming narrow, and actually normally the epithelium occlusion of the lumen, it is a normal condition in case of early stage, but later it gets recanalized. But sometimes what happen in some cases it cannot undergo recanalization, or it is have undergone the abnormal recanalization. This may lead to atresia, duplication, stenosis, that's it. Next, let us see non-development of nerve plexus in the wall of part of intestine. So here it is also anomaly, because if there is no nerve plexus, then how our intestine works? Of course, it is difficulty in the passage of our intestinal contents in the lower part of colon mainly, that is the colon proximal to the defective segment, and it is distended with its contents. So you can understand, for example, this part, this penis colon, this part is obstructed, then here all the structures get accumulated and it balloons out like it a bulging, right? So along with the contents, this condition is called megacolon, also known as Hirschsprung's disease. Hirschsprung's disease. Okay. Next, abnormal thickening of muscular wall. Sometimes what happens, the muscle wall also get thickened, especially the pyloric end of a stomach. We know stomach has upper cardiac and lower pyloric end. So mainly if the pyloric end, if the musculature is abnormal, then there is congenital pyloric stenosis and also thickening the muscle which bulge into the lumen and narrow it. So it is mainly the primary cause, same as a megacolon. And next, coming to the external pressure by the abnormal peritoneal bands or abnormal blood vessels. It is also associated with the duodenum and it is compressed by a annular pancreas. And next, the imperforate anus. It is caused by stenosis, atresia of a lower part of the rectum and also anal canal. And next, let us move on to abnormal communication or fistula. There are some parts of the gut which are abnormally associated with other cavities or surface of the body, and it is most common in relation with the esophagus, rectum, and usually also with the atresia of normal passage. So tracheoesophageal fistula, it is the atresia of esophagus along with the abnormal communication between the esophagus and also trachea, as the name, right, tracheoesophageal fistula. Next, there may be incomplete septation of cloaca, like rectum, which is associated with urinary bladder, urethra, vagina, may open onto the perineum with abnormal side and also which may imperforate the anus. So this is an incomplete separation of, because this problem arises because of an incomplete separation of cloaca. Next, coming to duplication. The varied length of the intestinal tract may be duplicated and some part may show cysts, or considerable length may or may not communicate with the rest of the intestine. So all this we'll understand one by one by means of diagram later. So first we'll complete the theory one by one. Diverticula. These are mainly arising from any part of the duct, most common near the duodenum, and the persistence of vitellointestinal duct may also cause this diverticula, and it is attached to the terminal part of the ileum, which is called as Meckel's diverticulum. And also the diverticular ilia, it's of surgical importance as it may undergo inflammation and giving rise to symptoms similar to appendicitis. And remember that Meckel's diverticulum is also of an interest as pancreatic tissue or gastric type of mucosa may present in its wall, and ulceration and perforation can also occur in this diverticulum. The next, whole vitellointestinal or distal part alone may be patent, and it is former condition lead to the fecal fistula at the umbilicus, and also later condition lead to the formation of umbilical sinus. Vitellointestinal duct may represent cyst, enterocystoma, and vitelline cyst or bifibrous cord may cause danger in later life, that is causing as coils of intestine, and also may get twisted sometimes and leading to the strangulation, that is twisted form. And remnants of vitellointestinal duct may also give rise to some growths like so. Now let us move to errors of rotation. So as we said, rotation is going on. There may be some errors also sometimes, that is non-rotation of midgut. The small intestine lie towards the right side of the abdominal cavity and the large intestine towards the left side. So this is abnormal condition. And reverse rotation, like transverse colon crosses behind the superior mesenteric artery and the duodenum crosses in front of it, so which is very abnormal. And non-return of umbilical hernia, that is the coils of intestine develop midgut loop remain outside the abdomen. We know already our intestine first is outside the abdomen, and if it remains like that, it causes umbilical hernia. The child born with the loops out of umbilicals is called as exomphalos or omphalocele. And also the loops of intestine or other abdominal contents are also seen outside. And in congenital umbilical hernia, muscle along with the skin is absent in the umbilical, creating a defect in the abdomen wall by which abdomen contents pass. It is covered by the peritoneum. But in exomphalus, they are covered only by amnion. And next, errors of fixation. The parts of the intestine actually normally retroperitoneal have the mesentery and abnormal twisting, that is called as volvulus, and the twisting of blood vessels lead to the obstruction to the blood supply. And the parts of the intestine which are normal have the mesentery and may be fixed by the abnormal adhesions of peritoneum. And the cecum remains subhepatic or descend only to the lumbar region or descend into the pelvis sometimes. And situs inversus, we know all abdominal and thoracic which are laterally transported, that is opposite side, right side to the left side to the right side. So like example, appendix and duodenum lie, actually they should lie right side, but now they are left side. And the stomach, we know it is on left side, but now stomach may be in the right side. So this is reverse of right and left sides of an organ. This is called as situs inversus. So finally we'll see the diagrams and we can confirm this section. We can end up this section. So varieties of atresia and stenosis, you can see here. This is of one term. These three are atresia. Stenosis means narrowing. Then what is atresia? Atresia means lumen is obstructed by any means. So you can see it is cut off and obstructed. Here some fibrous tissue is formed. Here some septum is only formed. And you can see it's stenosis, narrowing. And here you can see the megacolon. As we said, some part will be constricted or obstructed. Because of that, all the food we have eaten or all the whatever gets stuck in the above part, so that it causes a megacolon. So constricted segment, site of obstruction, dilated colon. And you can see this is congenital pyloric stenosis in our stomach. As we said, at the pyloric end there may be pyloric stenosis, that is the lower part only will be very narrow, so that it will not allow the contents. So this is duodenum, this is hypertrophic pyloric stenosis from the stomach. So we know from the stomach it should passage into duodenum, but if there is constriction, stomach may also get dilated because of this. And also hypertrophic pyloric sphincter is present in congenital pyloric stenosis. Now we are going to move on to obstruction of duodenum by cystocolic band passing from the gallbladder to transverse colon. So you can see from the gallbladder to transverse colon there is cystocolic band. So because of this, it is leading to obstruction in the duodenum. And next you can see annular pancreas surrounding the duodenum. So this is a pancreatic duct, pancreatic tissue. This is the duodenum. So if it is like this, it is also an anomaly. And next you have various type of imperforate anus. First one you can see this is stenosis of anus. Stenosis, narrowing of anal canal. B, you can see persistent anal membrane. Still anal membrane is present, then of course it cannot open to outside. And C, the proctoidium is represented by solid mass here, this black one, of ectodermal cells. And there is a big gap between the hindgut and rectum, right? Here you can see. And D, you can see the upper and lower parts of rectum separated by a gap. So all these conditions may of course lead to the obstruction or stenosis or atresia. So you can see a normal arrangement of trachea and esophagus, so how they are. And you can see various form of tracheoesophagus fistula, how this fistula are formed. Actually normally they should be like this, two separate tubes, but here they are fused, and one side there is forming fibrous tissue and they are completely fused, and you can see one side they are fused. And here there are different cases of renal rectal fistula in male, A to D, from A to D in male, and from E to H in female. So let us see one by one. So the fistula may be between the rectum and urinary bladder. So where is our rectum? So this is a urinary bladder system. If the fistula is between the rectum and urinary bladder, that is called as rectovesical, as in A and F. So in A and F, you can see between the rectum and urinary bladder there are some fistulas. This is rectovesical, and between the rectum and urethra, that is rectourethral. Rectum and urethra, this is rectum, urethra. Between this also there are some, like in case of B and C. So here you can see B and also C. So these are mainly between the rectum and urethra. This is rectourethral. And between the rectum and vagina, that is rectovaginal in case of G, H and F. So G, H and F in between the rectum and vagina. So this is vagina. Where is the rectum? This is a rectum. Between the rectum and vagina there may be fistula sometimes. That is rectovaginal. And the rectum may open on a peritoneum at the abnormal site, as in D and E. D and E opening into the abnormal sites, and in this case anal pit is formed at the normal site. Next, in a decrease of duplication of the gut represented by a cyst on the terminal ileum, as in A. Cyst may be formed and by duplication of entire colon and terminal ileum. And you can see the sites at which congenital diverticulum may arise from stomach and duodenum. These are the anomalies related to vitellointestinal drugs. So A, it's a Meckel's diverticulum. So this is umbilicus, anterior abdominal wall, terminal ileum. This is a Meckel's diverticulum. B is a patent vitellointestinal duct. C is an umbilical sinus. and D is a cyst attached to the abdominal wall, and E is a stenosis of the gut at the site of attachment of duct, and F is a vitellointestinal duct. Vitellointestinal duct represented by a fibrous growth, and umbilical growth arising from a remnants of duct is also seen. So last diagram is errors of rotation. Like you can see here, the non-rotation of coils of small intestine lie in the right half of abdomen, and left, and the colon in the left half. And B is the reverse rotation. The duodenum lies anterior to the superior mesenteric artery, and also the colon crosses behind it. And you can see this is exome flux. That is, the coils of intestine are derived from the midgut loop, fail to return into the abdominal cavity. So that's how it's. And this is a final diagram, errors in descent of cecum. So here you can see this is subhepatic, B is lumbar, C is pelvic. So the cecum is absent over this areas if you observe. So the normal position is shown in a dotted line, A and B. So in dotted line you can see that is the normal position, but how it is abnormal now. So this is the errors in descent of cecum. So if you check out this timetable of events, it is perfect. So completed this lesson.